Dumb Christian Guys.
What was it you had learned about that type of theology that sent you on that spiral?
Okay, I was listening to a broadcast. It was a monologue speech. Spurgeon, maybe?
Okay. Yeah, I don't know who believes what, but
Yeah.
a fairly popular
Right.
faith teacher, yeah.
RC or something. I don't know. Mixing them up. Anyway, it was a well done, very well done speech. I don't know what else to call it.
Sure.
And he used the Bible to reinforce these ideas that he was presenting.
Mm-hmm.
And it was that long before the foundations of the earth were formed, we were predestined to. He chose the ones that would. I can't remember quite what he said, but he chose the ones that were going to make it already. They were already written in the Lamb's Book of Life,
Right.
Where the rest weren't.
And it gets a little tricky because there's some scripture that says according to his foreknowledge, like,
Okay.
so some people believe that he wrote the names in the Lamb's Book of Life
Right.
because he's outside of time and he looked throughout time and he said, well, they're going to believe, they're going to believe, they're going to believe. So before it all began,
Right.
he wrote. But I think in the vein that you're talking about, he arbitrarily picks, I'm just going to
Yeah.
save this group and that person, the rest of them are screwed.
Right, shovel and coal.
Yeah.
In hell for the rest of their eternity. Whether it's within this structure of thought, whether it is an arbitrary you, or he looks forward and says, okay, it was them.
Right.
In either scenario, humans are being sent to hell. They were created.
Okay.
And now being punished for being created and not chosen.
Right.
That's where he was presenting it as a good thing. I instantly went to, oh, okay, so God is a monster.
Yeah.
Right. And if God's a monster, why do I want to have anything to do with him? So, that's where I went. I've come back from that in the process. I still don't have any answers, but
Right.
I've tried to explain it.
Yeah, so I shared with you a little bit, like, I was working at a church and this other church wanted to use our building to teach during the week because they didn't have their own building. They met at a high school. Can we use your building on Mondays to teach the basic tenets of Reformed theology, which is Calvinism, which is predestination.
Sure.
And yeah, laying down this groundwork. So I'm going to try and unpack it as best I can because I think this is probably a good conversation. So the idea is we had perfect free will when we were perfect, before sin. God knew, so it's weird because they say God didn't cause us to sin, but he created us knowing we would.
And also gave us the possibility.
Well, no, they say he created us knowing we would.
Well, true. Okay, right.
Right? So it's like, well, then I get hung up on, well, why would you, then that's
Exactly.
why would you create us just to send us to
Seems
hell?
irresponsible.
Right.
Right. Kind of reckless.
Right. I built this go-kart knowing it's going to fall apart
Or
in the
blow
middle
up.
of the right.
Right.
Okay. So God knows that people are going to reject him. When sin occurs, so when he creates people, Adam and Eve, he creates them in his image. But then if we go to Genesis chapter 5, it says Adam had sons in his image. No longer are they having children in
Got
the
you.
image of God.
Got you.
Right? So it's now in the image of a broken, imperfect tendency to sin. I don't know that we're born sinful, original sin, that kind of stuff.
I got a little trouble with that myself, but yeah, whatever.
right.
Yeah.
So, but we're born in Adam and Eve's image, no longer God's image.
Gotcha.
So it's a tilted, broken. Okay.
Right.
And they say the idea is when you are born in that broken image, you cannot choose God because you will only ever choose what you think is good for you when it's different than what God says is good for you. So the idea, so there's like 5, it's called TULIP. It's the 5 pillars of Reformed theology. And I don't know them all, but I know the T stands for total depravity, which means every human after sin occurred is so broken that they cannot choose God on their own. So the only way that anyone can be saved is if God chooses them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So then it's presented in this idea of, so if God chose you, man, isn't that a good thing? And so I struggle because I'm like,
Well, yeah,
well, yeah,
it is.
that's a good thing.
You made the team.
Right. So just the fact that God would save anyone
Yeah,
is a demonstration of his goodness.
sure.
But then, yeah, I'm still hung up on, well, but you knew, you created people knowing 3/4 of them shoveling coal,
Right.
suffering conscious torment for eternity.
For eternity.
And I actually got to the point where I said, if that's what's true, I reject.
I'm out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I am out. But then I always would laugh because the irony is that just means I wasn't chosen to begin with, and
Well,
so it doesn't
okay.
matter.
Okay. Right.
Right?
But also in that vein of thought, if you're thinking about it and you're worried about it, that probably means that you were chosen.
Don't try and confuse me with your quantum physics.
Circular
Right.
logic.
But even then, so one of the pillars is God's total sovereignty, which means no one can resist him. So if God chose you, you can't reject being chosen.
Okay.
So if we're sitting here rejecting being chosen
Right.
because of that, well, then then we weren't chosen.
Okay.
Because that's part of the theology is if God chose you, it's I don't remember the word for it, but you can't reject it.
Okay.
So you have to be saved. And that's another thing that I really struggle with. Like, if God chose you, you don't have any say in the matter. Like, God has either destined you to hell or he's forced you to believe in him. That's the idea.
Okay. And I want to argue.
Yeah,
but
please.
you're presenting the facets of this theology.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's
I mean, if you have, like, let's walk through it because.
Okay, and if that's the case, then we're mere puppets.
Right.
And so what matters?
Right.
Nothing.
What's really valuable because.
Right.
Yeah, like, I think part of the thing that is the draw to Christ is it's a free gift. It's offered.
Right. It would be that what you just outlined about we have no choice but to choose, if God chooses us, would be similar to us creating an AI robot that just loves us. It kind of sounds stupid, but it's kind of empty.
Right.
There's the robot isn't choosing us. It's just, it has to do what we want, what we say.
And so then we go back to the whole good argument. Is that good for us to just be pre-programmed?
Right. Robots.
And Paul says, what right does the clay have to say to the potter,
I know. Yeah.
why would you make me? And so I get that.
But that pot doesn't have feelings. The
pot isn't self-aware.
It is not self-aware.
Right.
It's a pot.
You can put soup in it or flowers.
Right. We don't treat our animals that way.
But my point is,
Some people do, but
Scripture says God's ways are above our ways. Like we can't, in this life, we can't wrap our heads around why God does things the way. This morning we were talking about God does things and he doesn't necessarily tell us why.
seldom.
Right.
Right. It's like telling your 2-year-old.
Right. Why?
This
Why?
is why the...
Shut up and go to bed.
Right. Exactly. I'm tired of it.
Because I said so.
Because I said so. That's the answer.
Yeah.
But if that's the case, then why all of this ruse? Why put us on a planet, create the infrastructure, create the atoms, go to all this trouble, and we talked about it being good, but...
Just to give us the illusion.
For some sick...
That's what it feels like.
Twisted thing. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. But then, so that's why I think I said earlier when it's like, we can't, I don't remember what I was going to say, but it's our inability. We can come up with our ideas of what we think is good. That's sin. When we choose what we think is good and it's different to what God says is good, right?
Knowing that is a difficult task. Knowing if you're off.
Sure. But where I'm going with this is when we look at these difficult things, what's true about God? Did he predestine us? We're still determining what we think is good, and it might not be what a all-knowing good God has determined is good.
Likely not.
Right.
We are so limited.
Yeah. But that's the tension, right? Is like in our minds, of course this is a better way to interpret the world and what I should do and who God is. And yet the thing that I continue to wrestle with is, what do I know? What gives me the right to determine what's good? Because I break shit all the time. I hurt people all the time. I make bad decisions all the time. What makes me think I know what's good?
Well, so you've got to tap into what is good. Going on with what you think you know and what you think is good limits you. But if you'll tap into
what's really
the Creator,
good.
right?
Okay, so we talked about that yesterday. The difference between interpreting God through our circumstances or letting God define our circumstances.
Okay.
Right? So if our view of the reality is if someone behaves this way, they're a monster, so then we ascribe those qualities to God and we say, well, God must be a monster, versus let's do the right order of operations. Let's discover who God is first and let him define what's good.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think you finished the tenets or the facets.
I don't know. Those are just like the basic ones.
Okay.
The other ones, it's like limited atonement. Like the work that Jesus did on the cross only is enough to save the people who are elected.
Okay.
I don't remember them all, but the two that really I wrestle with is the total depravity and whichever one it is that says you can't reject being chosen.
Okay.
You have to be saved if God chose you.
Okay.
Those are just the two that I have the biggest struggle with.
And what I have to remind myself so that I don't go into a downward spiral with that thought process is just, to quote the Big Lebowski.
Just your opinion,
It's just like your opinion, man.
Yeah.
Okay, if I can use the analogy of the cup perspective.
Oh, yeah.
This cup, although I can see through it, and by the way, this vodka is really awesome.
Mine's Everclear.
Oh, nice. Nice. Cheers. I can see the handle, but, let's say I can't see it. And so your perspective is, you described this glass to me and it clearly has a handle on it. And say, "No, man, you're messed up. It doesn't have a handle on it."
Right.
And we fight to the death over it. Your truth is that there's a handle on it, and
Right.
if I could just walk in your shoes for a minute, I'd see there's a handle on it, and I'm gonna just beat you to death over it because there's a handle on it.
Yeah.
That's how ridiculous the whole thing is to me. That people argue about their perspective on God. It's stupid.
I've got him figured out.
Yeah.
You don't have a clue.
Right. I've got all this terminology, and I've gone to school for 30 years. And
But that's what's so amazing about the Bible. It says that Jesus, the Word, was made flesh. So God revealed himself to us, right? So it's not like we're stuck on this journey to try and figure out who God is, but that he stepped down and revealed himself to us so that
right.
everyone has full access to the Father through Jesus. But yeah, even in that sense, we still get hung up on our perspectives.
Right. I can see that you will not gain perspective unless God allows it.
Sure.
I can see that.
Sure.
And we pray for wisdom. And I have, and I wonder if that was not a good thing to do, because you not that I'm wise by any metrics, but you kind of start to see some things, and it becomes a burden.
Yeah.
The more you know, the more burdensome it can
and
be.
the more responsible you are for that information.
Right. That's
Yeah.
that's a kind of a problem.
The thing that, so I mean, like I said, my faith was almost completely shipwrecked too. The thing that finally Jesus drew my attention to is there's this place where people are rejecting him, and they're like, "This guy's batshit. Like I can't do what he says. I can't accept what he says. It's so contrary to what I'm comfortable with, what I'm familiar with, what I believe is right and true. I can't get on board with this thing. I can't wrap my head around it." And Jesus says something to the effect of, if you can't get on board with what I'm saying to you, at least understand how good I am by the works that I do. If this is too intellectual, or if it's too complex, if it's too confusing, and you're having difficulty believing that a good God would ask you to eat my flesh and drink my blood, right?
Yeah.
Then at least believe the works that I do. Because so we were talking about, like, is God really good because of this way that he does things? But then if we actually take a second to say, well, what is the work he's doing in my life? What are the things that he's doing to make me whole and righteous and healthy and, restoring joy to my life, giving me hope, right? Like Jesus says, if this is too much, look at the work I'm doing in your life and trust that I'm good because I'm doing good things.
Right. Right. In faith, the evidence of things not seen.
And the certainty of things hoped for, or something like that. Yeah, Hebrews 11.
Because we're not given to that sight to know this, what we're talking about. And you just said, Jesus says, if you can't wrap your mind around it, then just, look at this, and this is good enough.
Should be, yeah.
Faith, the extent of our faith, Jesus healed people because their faith made them whole. It was, Jesus was supplying the miracle, but it was because they were faithful that he could heal them.
Right.
It's because they did what they were supposed to do, not because of Jesus, if that makes any sense.
And that's there's an answer for that in certain, Reformed theology, where it says, but you only have faith because God chose to give it to you.
Okay.
Right?
Well,
So there's always an answer that
kind
of undermines this idea of free will. But
it's real stuffy and uncomfortable.
But yeah, so I think there has to be this dichotomy that yes, we were predestined, whatever that means, and we have free will. There's some sort of thing where somehow works together until you observe it and you try to like unpack it, right? Then it's like, wait, this doesn't work.
We're unraveling the whole thing right now just by talking about it. Right. I was like, shut up. Shut up.
Right.
Gonna get struck by lightning.
Dumb Christian guys.